Good morning and happy Studio Sunday. I'm going to be working in my studio today and continuing on my treasure trade treasure that I'm making. I'm pretty antsy to just get to work today because I kind of feel like I do have a lot left to do. So let's remind ourselves on where we left off last week. Okay, we're back at the bench, and this is where I got to last time. I have finished cutting out, that's nothing. I've finished cutting out all of the pieces that I had laid out last week. Here it is. So I think that what I'm going to do today is I'm just going to work on truing up all of these things. You can see that I drilled the holes, kind of pilot holes, and so then I'm going to go ahead, line them up, probably glue them together, and then just true up so that they're exactly, I'm just gonna kind of work intuitively and see what needs to get done as it needs to get done. Like I said before, I'm feeling a little bit overwhelmed, but I think if I just keep moving forward, eventually I just keep telling myself that it'll all come together. And I was able to actually find these setting burrs, which are the 3mm setting burrs that, correspond with our 3mm CZs. So I don't have to order any 3mm setting burrs. That's exciting. So now I don't have to order anything for this project. I just have everything that I need. And I decided I'm going to just do the white CZs because the amount of stones that I need for this project, it's quite a few. And so instead of going with, even though, man-made stones are quite affordable, this is what I've decided to do because I am putting a lot of my time into this. So we're kind of just trying to keep it simple, use materials that we have already invested in, and go from there. So yeah, I'm just going to get cracking, but to be completely honest, I don't know how exciting this studio session is going to end up being because I'm probably just not going to be moving around a lot. I'm not going to be soldering anything. It's just going to be grunt work basically, which is fine. There's a certain amount of this type of work in every project pretty much. So it's to be expected. It's, I'm just going to put on some good music or a good podcast and try to go to town. So without further ado, let's get to work.
All right. Look at that. All the pieces are cut out. So I'm just taking the paper pattern off of the metal, and with the rubber cement, it's like a nice adhesion when you're sawing out the pieces, but it just, peels right off. It's actually kind of like very satisfying to peel the pieces off, to peel the pattern off once you've finished cutting out the pieces. It's like the final aspect of that step. Oh yeah, so I'm just showing that there's a burr left from the jeweler's saw. And so I'm showing the difference between what it looks like before I, break that burr off the corners, and explaining what file I'm using. It's just using like a medium-sized needle file, half-round needle file. And it's like a pretty fine file, but it's just like I'm not doing really any finishing work. I'm just taking the burr off the edges because I'm going to glue them together. Oh, I don't know if I mentioned that. I may have mentioned it before, but the matching pieces, or the pieces that are like duplicates, I'm going to super glue them together and then file the edges so that they're like perfectly matched up. I'm looking for something. Oh yeah, these little squeeze clamps. They're just little Stanley squeeze clamps. I use them for everything in the metal studio. So this is super glue, which I have honestly like a great relationship with super glue, but because I use it as a tool all the time. So that super glue was dried up, and so I had to get a different bottle of super glue. But super glue is kind of like got a bad rap in the jewelry metals industry, or like in the art jewelry world, because it's a big no-no to actually like super glue something together, or not use cold connections, or to super glue like a stone into place. Like, I mean, oh my gosh. So I use it a lot, but it's usually a means to an ends of like getting something done. All right, now that I have finished like kind of explaining what I was doing to the Sony camera, which will be in the YouTube video, like the appropriate amounts of it will be in the YouTube. I tend to talk more than I need to, and then when I'm cutting together the video, I cut out, honestly, I cut out a lot. But now that that has all been explained, I'm just really like gonna go to town. I glued together the pieces, the long pieces that didn't have any holes in them, so I just eyeballed them close enough together when I glued them together, but I'm gonna be using the pre-drilled holes in these elements to line them up with each other. And so one of the steps to make sure that I can actually like super glue these pieces together tight is I have to deburr the holes that were drilled with the like smaller drill bits, remember? So yeah, I have a larger drill bit, and I'm just kind of twisting it around the hole to get rid of the burr on the other side. Yeah, now they fit together really nicely. I'm using 2 drill bits that are the same size but are smaller. See if you can stay with me on this. The drill bits are the same size, but they're smaller than the holes that have already been drilled in these pieces because of like my human error. I couldn't drill the holes in the exact right spot. And so now I'm using these drill bits to line up the holes the best I can. And then I'm gonna obviously super glue them together, squeeze clamp them until it's dry. And then I'll use the actual correct final drill bit to drill through both the pieces at the same time in both holes. Using the pre-drilled holes as kind of like pilot holes. And then those 2 pieces, all 4 holes, like should correspond with each other. Yeah, so now I don't know. We'll see what I come up with I can always come up with something to talk about, but we'll see what I come up with for the rest of the voiceover of this part, like the music time lapse, because I'm just going to be doing the same thing. Removing the burrs off of all of the edge corners. And then pretty much by the time I have the next 2 pieces ready to glue together, the last ones that I glued together are dry. And so I just keep reusing the same clamps. And that's one of the great things about super glue. And then also when you're done with the super glue, it breaks apart really easily. But I could always like soak the pieces in a little bit of acetone to break the bond. To be completely honest, when I was actually filing these pieces, the bonds broke prematurely, and then I just used the holes and relined it up and re-glued them together. So, it's just like one of those things comes with the territory. You just get used to it. It's part of the process, Yep, much of the same. Just, it's funny, when I was starting this, I was going to listen to a podcast or like put in my earbuds, but I never ended up actually doing that. I just got so kind of lost in the process. So for lining up all the holes, I can't remember what size I had pre-drilled all those little holes, but I'm using size 55 drill bits to do the lining up of it. And I actually like just reordered a whole like dozen of 55 size drill bits, so I have enough. So I must have gotten to a stopping point where some things were drying up, and I just checked all the cameras, make sure all the cameras were still rolling and had enough battery life to continue. Because I feel like I'm about halfway done with this day at this point. I use a little bit of probably 320 grit sandpaper on these pieces just because the burr was kind of hard to get at the right angle with that long of a file. And I do have smaller needle files, but just like getting in there, the burr that's on these edges is like so brittle that it's like wants to break off. So I just use a little bit of sandpaper, but I probably won't include that in the final video because it's such a small, like nuanced thing. And you know, I'll show that I used the jeweler's file, and you could just as easily use the jeweler's file. So it's just sometimes in the final cutting of these videos, there's certain things that I'm just like, I don't know if it's important to the storyline. So, but you get to see it here. I try to keep my bench clear of like clutter and if I'm drinking something. But in that moment, I was like, oh no, this blue can, they might think I'm drinking like a Bud Light or a Coors Light. And so I, at that moment, was like, I'll just hold it up to the camera so they know I'm drinking carbonated water. So just so you guys know, I don't drink alcohol in my studio. Oh, you can clearly see it in that shot though. Oh, I must be getting ready to explain something. Yep. Oh yeah. So you can see a close-up of kind of more like what I'm doing. I don't include as many close-up shots in these studio updates because it takes longer for me to cut that footage together and in an appropriate way. But it's also like I need to save a little bit so you can have something to look forward to when I actually post the whole final video of making of these things, you know. So it's kind of, I'm trying to walk this fine balance of like having transparency so you can see everything that I'm doing in my studio sessions, but I also don't want you to have no reason to watch the final videos. But maybe I shouldn't worry about that so much because I kind of feel like you'd watch the final videos anyways. Like, you're supporting me, you'd be interested in all of the content that I'm putting out. But it is also true that it takes longer to cut together the detailed shots or the close-up shots, whereas to have just like the lower resolution footage of just the time lapses sped up, it cuts together in a way that's sustainable for me to keep putting out these update videos. So this is kind of why you might be like, what is she even doing? All right, so now I'm picking out what drill bit I'm going to use. So I measure the tube with my little drill index. And then put the drill bit in there and start drilling them. That's a good shot. That's a good view. Sometimes it's hard to tell if it's going to be a good framed up shot or not. And every once in a while I'll be editing and I'll be like, oh yeah, I got it that time. This is a good overall framed shot. It was kind of unfortunate because a lot of those iPod shots, my fingers were in the way. So you couldn't actually see the drilling through material. You just saw my fingers holding the material, like clamping it down as tight as I could. So, all right, doing a little bit of clean as you go, putting the drill bits away and another camera needed a new battery, so taking time to replace the battery on that one. It's kind of nice in these studio updates. I can be honest with you about, how much fiddling and how much time goes into the actual cameras. So this was a good shot. I put my older GoPro up on the flex shaft stand on the top there. All right, using the actual size drill bit. Oh, so this one broke. So this is an example of two pieces that broke apart already, and I haven't even filed the edges yet. So I was able to use like I already talked about, I used the exact size drill bit to go in the holes, and now it's like gonna line up beautifully. But I just gotta re-glue it back together and use those squeeze clamps. I must be explaining something about filing the edges. But this is a really nice file. It's pretty aggressive. It's like probably like a 0 Nicholson. Yeah.
All right, so what I basically just said for the sake of the YouTube video, which is probably, in the wrap, in your time lapse that you just finished watching, it probably sounded like me, 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 me. But basically all of this file work, I'm just going to be sitting here filing. I don't know how interesting that's going to be. And this camera, my head-on main shooter, has 7 minutes left on the micro SD card. So I think that it would be good if I just stopped recording for tonight and I just dumped all the footage, but while the footage is dumping on my computer, because that will take, I should time it and tell you how long it takes. I'm just going to keep filing these things, but it's not really here. Let me give you a wrap up of where I'm at in 7 minutes left and counting. All right, so this is all I have done today, which I think was a great success. I feel really happy with the progress that I made, and I feel like, we're on pace, we're doing well, we're going to be on time, everything is going to come through. But yeah, you can see everything glued them together, drilled the holes bigger, and now I'm filing to make them. Here, I finished this one side. Can you see how nice and even that look? Ooh, look at that. Looks good. There's a little bit of inconsistency, but it's also like these two things are two different clamps, like that are glued together right now. So they don't have to be, like, I mean, I want them to be a pair, but it's like I don't have to, for these ones, I don't have to like kill myself to get it like perfect. But that's pretty perfect. And I mean, the edges are all going to be kind of like broken anyway. So if there's a little bit of inconsistency right there, I'm not going to file like my edges down to nothing because I'm trying to make it, like, I'm just trying to make it good enough, you know, because that's good enough. But yeah, you can see how let's see, this is like a really bad example of, you see how it like isn't lined up at all. And I think that probably, these ones were the worst. And I think that probably comes from just like human error and inconsistency. And like when the holes were drilled, but now these holes match up perfectly. And so when it's all together, I'm hoping that will like help it work, I guess. Okay. Like help the mechanism be working successfully. So we'll see. I do feel like I'm really going out on a limb here, because if this doesn't work, well, let's not even think about that. It's going to work. And if it doesn't, like, I'll just say that it's coming. You know what I mean? It's going to be okay. I'm not going to. Yeah. So that's where I'm at. I guess I can stop recording this. And you know, it's been a pleasure working in my studio today, as it always is. And I do kind of feel like keeping this project in like bite-sized increments. Oh, that memory card just died. I have 3 minutes left on this one. Okay. Yeah, but yeah, I think that keeping it in like bite-sized pieces, working in my studio on Sunday, is really gonna make this most enjoyable. So let's just keep on this pace and just lean on John's plans and just hope that it translates into this thinner metal. And, you know, it's going to be great. But thanks so much for tuning in and keeping me accountable and making me, you know, feel like I'm like listened to, I guess, and that you're excited to tune in and see what the progress is on this piece. So I'm excited too. And I love you. And I guess that's it. Besides just like thanks as always. And I already said I love you, but I'll say it again. I love you. And you're the best. You really are. Thank you. And have a good night. Mwah!
This performance is dedicated to our sponsors, the Patreon members of the Ironclad Crew.